Hi, and my apologies for the delay in getting this video to you. I've been away for a little while and I just wanted to get on with the next step, which is the hemming of this jacket. I'm going to hem it up before we put the lining in to make sure that the lining fits nicely. And I just want to show you the steps I've gone to so far. So I've undone that thread that was holding that edge of the lapel and the front of the jacket. So I've just taken that up so that I can open this section out here. There, it's fully open, and then I can measure and fold up the hem like that. The other thing I wanted to show you before I go ahead and do the pressing of the hem is the pocket. Now when I fitted this in, it fitted fine, and obviously, but then since then I've put this side seam in, and for some reason or other this pocket decided it did not want to lie flat. So what I've done is I've unpicked the pocket bag and I've just positioned, I'm literally just stroking it down there and then putting that out, and it now sits and lies flat. As you can see, there's a little excess at the bottom and it's a bit short on that side. So I need to restitch that and then that'll be lying perfectly flat. If I show you the other side, this is before it's been undone, and you can see it's, for some reason, it's just decided it doesn't want to sit flat. So this is a good point to readjust anything like that that's not going to sit flat and will therefore affect the fit on and the lie of the jacket on the outside. So I'll do the same on this. I'm going to unpick those seams there for the pocket bag. It's not going to affect the size of the pocket at all. It's not going to affect how the pocket lies at the top, but it will make it, all of this excess, disappear, and it'll look and lie much better. So that's something I've got to do. The other thing I wanted to show you before I do my pressing is I have marked 4 centimetres from the bottom of the edge of the jacket all the way along, and that's just my guide. I haven't done this little bit, but I will. That's my guide for how much I want to turn up the jacket. So I'm going to use my hot press ruler, place that on that line there like that, fold that up, and I'm going to press 4 centimetres of edge all the way up. Obviously, once it's completely in place, I'll do another press at the end, but this is just to give a good guide to the bottom of that hem there. The other thing I will do, and I'll point this out again when I have done the pressing, at this point on the lapel line, the inner facing here, I'll go up to 4 centimetres there, but I will angle that up slightly more so that when that gets folded over, that will not show on the outside of the jacket, because it will be at a slight angle up, and therefore any excess will be above the line of the bottom of the jacket. Obviously that's rather extreme there because I haven't pulled that up, but you can see it'll be out of the way, you won't see that. Okay, so I'm going to get on now and press this 4 centimetres from the bottom, and I will then show you what that looks like in a moment. Okay, I've done the first press. So I've pressed all along 4 centimetres away from the edge, and that's what it's looking like now. I've also pinned the pocket bags so that I can then re-sew that, and I will do that before I do much more on the hem. But the thing you might notice, and you will notice it with your own jacket, is that there's just a little bit too much material along the edge here for it to sit flat. And if I show you this little part here, it wants to sit. Can you see how that bit there is longer than the actual section of the jacket? So I'm going to add a row of ease stitches just a little bit away from the edge of the hem here, and then I will just pull those ease stitches just to take out some of that fullness, and so that it will sit nice and flat against the jacket. And I'm going to do that next, and then I'll show you what I do. I'm going to trim these sections of the seams just to there, so that it's close to that stitching of the hem, and that just takes that fullness out of there, stops that from being bulky on those seams. So I shall do that at all of these points along here too. I will show you what that looks like in a moment. Here are the seam allowances that I've trimmed. And as you can see, I've taken out all of these little bits of fabric here. I've cut them up to the line where the fold is. And those are roughly 1/8 of an inch from the seam line, which is about 3 millimeters. And you can see that again on there. Now at this point here, because this seam is flat and pressed back to the back part of the jacket from where the pocket is, I've actually layered that, so the inside seam is at 1/8 of an inch, 3 millimeters, and the outside part is at 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch. I'm now going to stitch my pockets and also add the ease stitching, and I'll add the ease stitching 1/4 of an inch, 6 millimeters away from this edge, and I will show you what that looks like in a moment. After you've trimmed the seams, the next thing that you need to do is to place some iron-on interfacing. I've just used a light iron-on interfacing here to cover the hem. So that's 4 centimeters plus 1/2 an inch, so about 12 or 13 millimeters extra. So I've just cut out a couple of strips, and then I've ironed it on, and then I've gone on to press that over, and it now sits really well. So that's the step, and that provides some structure to the bottom of the hem. The little overlap there gives you that extra little bit of weight just in that part, and it should then hang really and sit really straight. So none of those soggy hems for you. They've got this, and this is what provides that little bit of structure. Okay, so I've pulled the easing stitches, and as you can see, everything's lining up nicely. There's you can see a few little ruckles there where the fullness has been taken out, and a few there, and I've gone all the way along. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is that I've now restitched and trimmed the pocket bags so that they're all nice and smooth, and as you can see, there it is stitched. So that's fine. Same on the other side. And what I'm going to do now is, to help shrink out some of that fullness so that it doesn't show, I'm going to place some paper strips just underneath the hem, like so, and then I'm going to gently, very lightly steam that, and again that should help to reduce some of this fullness and help it to lie flat. But as you can see, it's lying nice and flat anyway. So that's what I'm going to do next, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. So there we are. I've pressed all of the edges and got rid of some of that fullness in there, just shrunk it out slightly. And what I want to show you now is what we need to do at this part of the facing. So what you'll expect is when that's sewn in, that's going to come across there and produce a really nice front edge and bottom part of the hem. Now, the only problem is there's a lot of thickness of fabric in here because you've got 4 layers. So what you need to do is take some of that fabric out. And this is what I'm going to show you now. So I have already marked this just for the benefit of this video, but this is what you're going to do. So 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters away from where the raw edge of that facing is, you're going to place a pin. So that's 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters from the edge. And then that's going to be your guide for the point of the part of the material that we're going to cut out. Now, the next thing you need to do is, there's our fold line. There's the crease that we've formed with the ironing. I've drawn 2 lines, or a line I should say, 2 marks, 1/2 inch there, which is 12, 13 millimeters from that crease, and drawn it to this edge of this seam here. So that's 1/2 inch away from that crease. Beyond that point, because we don't want to be cutting into this part here, so you'll cut out this fabric underneath. We've then got the next part on the other side of that seam. So this here is now 3/4 of an inch, which is going to be about 18 millimeters, something like that, 19 millimeters from the crease. So that's 3/4 of an inch there, and then draw your line in just by the pin that we've marked in here. And now you can see I've gone and put a hatch marking on there, and this is just to show this is the part that we're going to cut out. So we're going to cut to the seam, not through the seam, cut down and then cut across at the 3/4 of an inch mark and then down here. So we'll end up without that fabric. I'll do that on both sides and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. And here's the front facing, as you can see, with the 1/2 inch allowance there, and then increasing to 3/4 of an inch allowance at the seam, and then taken off at the point where it's 1 inch from the edge. And so that, as you can see, it's slightly above the edge of the bottom, and this corner you'll need to press really well to make sure it's nice and sharp, but that is how that should look once it's all in place. So we're now at the point where we can actually do the hemming, and we've done all of our cutting out. We've shrunk down the fullness of the hem line with ease stitching, and the next step is to do the hemming. And I've started at the seam line here, and I've taken, just pulled back that top part here, and I've done some hemming stitches that you can just about make out here. And we're actually at this point, and I've just brought them up to the top. So I've got a very fine needle. So I will just fold that back 1/2 inch, about 12, 13 millimeters. And then you need to, they're just very fine little stitches, just a couple of threads from underneath the garment. And the gap between your stitches should be about 1/4 of an inch. What you don't want to do is to go through the full thickness of the fabric. You just want to take a couple of threads, and the reason for that is because you don't want it to show on the outside. But it's very simple, very straightforward, and actually it doesn't take very long once you get used to it. And I'm not going very quickly here, but I'll have this finished quite quickly. So you just carry on all the way along. So once I've got past this hair canvas, I'll show you what it looks like in the actual fabric itself. I'll just hold that back. There we go. So you can feel it with your finger underneath, and I've literally just taken a couple of threads there. I know I haven't gone through, and then I'll just go through that little bit there. And keep working along. So through the jacket fabric, and then through the hem fabric. Just a little at a time. You don't want this too tight, again, because you don't want it to be pulling at all. I've come to where the jacket pocket is. I make sure that that's laying flat. Obviously, I want the hem in front of the pocket because I need to then add the lining and use this part to attach the lining to. So I've just placed a little pin there so that I know it'll hold in place. So here we are, that's all of that hemmed right all the way along to the end. But the next step is to attach, just catch this loose edge here on each side of the front facing, and I'll show you that next. And I'm going to use fell stitches just to hold that in place. So to fell stitch this facing in place, just this raw edge, I'm doing small stitches that just pick up the underside, and then at an angle I come out through the lapel facing, and then again go in just to the side of that stitch you just made, and then come up and through. They're very small stitches. It holds it nice and flat, and is just enough to hold that facing in place. So I shall do both sides, and then I'll show you what the jacket and the hem looks like on the mannequin. There we go. And there it is, knotted off. And here's the jacket on the mannequin, and that shows just how nice that hem is around there. So we're going to do exactly the same that we've just done there with the sleeve hems, so that'll be on next.